And thank you for your patience. Let me formally welcome you to the Erlang Solutions monthly webinar. Like I said, my name is Mladen Milikšić and I'm the VP for the EMEA region here at Erlang Solutions. And today's webinar is a continuation of a series of webinars we have been running across topics of interest in the world of Erlang and Elixir, and dealing with solutions based on these languages and the Beam in general. Specifically today, we will be talking about the advent of smartphone messaging and how it has wrested control over emerging markets with the creation of things like WhatsApp in 2009. Now, ever since then, messaging has grown in popularity all over the world, and places like Latin America and Africa are no exception to that particular rule. So today we will focus on the lessons that Twnel has learned as a company in its first 18 months of operating in Latin America. Now, as with any live event, please do excuse any technical issues that we may face today. I'll just briefly tell you a bit about Erlang Solutions. We are a products and services orientated company. We are completely devoted to Erlang and Elixir as languages. We work with organizations and individuals using Erlang and Elixir, and we help them, and support companies and, like I said, individuals using these technologies. We have offices in London, Stockholm, Krakow, Budapest, and San Francisco. We work on projects all over the world. We develop Erlang-based products, and some of those you may have heard of, such as MongooseIM, our open source messaging platform, and Wombat OAM, our monitoring and management technology for Erlang and Elixir systems. Now, I'm really pleased to say our speakers today are Carlos Sierra, the founder and CEO at Twnel, and Nicola Verite, the MongooseIM product owner at Erlang Solutions. We're deeply privileged to have both Carlos and Nicola speaking at the webinar and telling us a bit about Twnel's latest accomplishments and a bit about MongooseIM as well. So please allow me to finish by saying you're welcome to post questions throughout the duration of the webinar. Just use the chat facility on the webinar's interface. Our speakers, Carlos and Nicola, will answer as many questions as possible at the end of the webinar. If any questions are unanswered, you're welcome to raise them via email, and you will have my email address at the final slide of the webinar's presentation. I would now like to hand over to Carlos, who will be glad to start us off.
Okay, thank you, Mladen, for that kind introduction. So welcome everyone. Thank you again for joining us at this webinar. So we're going to start with an outline of what are we going to be covering during the presentation. So we're going to talk about the story of Clara and Andres, and you will bear with me with this story. And we're going to try to explain what is it that makes emerging markets different from most of the developed world uses of messaging. Also, we're going to start digging a little bit more on the challenges faced by businesses with mobile-first workers. Clara and Andres are the perfect definition of a mobile-first worker, and we're going to go there and try to explain what is it that we've learned over the last few months. Also, we will give you a presentation, an overview of what Twnel does. It's a very niche, very specific messaging service for emerging markets. We will also tell you more about why did we choose MongooseIM to support our backbone. Later on, we will talk more about the product and MongooseIM, the product, and Nicolas will be joining us to give us a larger explanation of how it works. So, so the story of Clara and Andres. So at Twnel, we really take user-centric design very seriously, and we've been observing the lives of thousands of users, and we've been observing hundreds of companies in emerging markets and have been able to shape our product according to their needs. And it's very interesting to see how those needs are very different from the needs of users in most developed countries or developed markets. So the whole story that I'm going to tell you happens in Medellin. And Medellin is Colombia's third largest city. It has around 2.4 million people at this point. The picture you're seeing here, the bottom left picture, it's one of the pictures of a very highly populated area of Medellin where most of the middle low income families live. And it's also important to notice that 95% of the population on Medellin runs on prepaid or on a pay-as-you-go model. And that makes it very different from what we see in other markets like the US and other more developed markets. So again, Medellin, the city you're seeing here, it's one of the third largest cities in Colombia, and it has huge amount of smartphone users. And just to give you more details on that, this graph tells a different story of what really is going on in terms of what messaging and what smartphone adoption is going through. So in the next 2 years, if you notice, the smartphone penetration in the regions, in these two regions, in Latin American region and the developing countries in general, will look like smartphone penetration in developed countries. It's going to be very similar. I mean, it started only in 2012. It was just 10% of the population, and now it's going to, in the next few years, it's going to turn out to be around 70%. So the difference between these two points in time, 2012 and 2020, is that most of the users in 2020 in these markets, in these Latin American, Caribbean, or developing markets, are getting connected for the first time. So they know they didn't have any other option to connect to the net, and now they're using their phones to connect for the first time. So that's a huge step in terms of how they get empowered through the use of smartphones. So I'm going to start telling you more about Clara. And the woman here on the left is Clara. Her name is Clara Rollave. She's a real person. She was open to share her story with us. And she's 33. And she was born in Medellin, actually. She got her first smartphone in December 2015. And the reason why she got it was because she really felt this social pressure of friends using messaging and texting each other through these chat apps or messaging apps. And she really felt that she was getting behind. So that's the reason why she joined the smartphone revolution. So she's the mother of 4. So she has 4 kids, Julian, Camilo, John, and Pedrito. She calls it Pedrito. And she's also married to Andres. And we're going to talk about Andres later on. And well, one important fact is that she's a self-employed, and she pretty much works with different companies at the same time. Actually, she works with 3 companies at this point in time. She works for Avon. It's a direct sales company that sells cosmetics and those kind of products. She also sells a product called Herbalife. It's another product that it's widely known worldwide. And also she works for a local direct sales company called Nova Venta. So she considers herself to be a direct sales entrepreneur. So she has a lot of control over her time, and she pretty much knows exactly when to devote time to selling the products and not. The interesting thing about this is Clara is one of the 1.5 million women in Colombia, in this country, who brings additional income to her household by selling products and services via the catalog. So that's a reality. I mean, it's 1.5 million people in a country like Colombia. Numbers are even higher in other countries like Mexico, Peru, Argentina, and Brazil. And that's just to count the Latin American case. And finally, her favorite mobile apps are, 1, WhatsApp, as she loves WhatsApp. Second one is Bancolombia app. It's her Colombia's largest bank, which has a huge online presence and a huge digital presence, and also Twnel. We're going to talk about why Twnel is her favorite app, or it's in the list of her 3 favorite apps. Now we're going to move to Andres. And Andres is, again, it's Clara's husband. He's 35. He also lives in Medellin, and he was born in Medellin. He's a smartphone user since December 2013. So he was early on a smartphone user. Pretty much, he's also an independent professional. I mean, he's affiliated, and he works as an independent professional affiliated with Colombia's largest insurance companies. So he works for Sura, one of the largest ones. He also works for Seguros Mundial, another one, local one, and for AXA. It's also an international conglomerate on the insurance business. So he's not alone in this job. I mean, he works with other 35 drivers in Medellin. He's a driver, and he works for these companies as a truck driver to help the insured people from these companies. And he's he's one of the 35 in Medellin, but he's also one of the 650 drivers that these companies employ along the whole country. And he got his smartphone earlier than his wife, because his employer suggested him to have one. So that was like a requirement for him. So you better get a smartphone if you want to keep your job. And that was the reason that he got his smartphone very early on. So I'm going to tell you a bit more about how smartphone messaging has changed the lives of these 2 persons. First, Clara and Andres, they really live a very different reality when it comes to how they use messaging on their daily lives. So it's a very different reality from how we use personal-to-personal messaging. And the reason why they do it is because for them, messaging, it's all about saving money and saving time. And those have become the main drivers of adoption of messaging among them. So they're part of a new growing middle class of population in countries like Colombia, Brazil, Mexico, again, Argentina, and also we're seeing the same thing happening in Africa and other countries. And these are users who are getting connected for the first time, and they're using the technology to work, to feed their children, and to save for their education. So as I mentioned before, they completely leapfrogged the PC laptop generation. So they've never used, or at least they're not very familiar with the usage of laptops, PCs, even web browsers, and they started to use messaging right from their smartphones. So that's a huge that has huge implications in terms of how they are accustomed to use technology. One interesting thing is that WhatsApp, as we mentioned at the beginning, WhatsApp and others have created a new set of communication habits that companies like Twnel and other companies are using to enable new and very useful use cases for these individuals and for the companies that they work with. And finally, as I mentioned also, I think we really, at Twnel, we really think that Clara and Andres are the best definition of a mobile-first worker. That's a very interesting way of defining the mobile-first worker. So they just went out to become mobile users because they needed to in order to sustain their families. Yeah. So that's one point. So I was also interested in sharing with you our observations about why is it that we think that emerging markets are different in terms of how messaging is being used in these markets. So as we mentioned, we're very user-centric design in terms of how we build a product. We're listening to our customers every single day, trying to get cues from them. And we've learned some lessons. So the first one is smartphone messaging, as you might basically conclude from this, is pretty much the foundation technology for these users who are getting connected for the first time. So it's the new platform for them. We hear a lot of news about how messaging is taking over the world, and how messaging has taken over teenagers in developed markets. But the reality in these markets is that this is the only way for them to connect. And this is the most familiar way for them to connect. So it's very quick, it's convenient, it's personal, it's alert-based, so it's very, feels like using SMS-like services. So they feel important when someone or even a company sends them a message, and it's pretty much mobile first. So messaging has become this foundational technology. That's one of the first observations that we've learned for the past few months. Second is that it turns out that mobile phones are the way that everyone identifies themselves in these scenarios, in these markets. So it's very interesting how number portability exists in most of these markets. That means that you get to keep your phone number with you all the time, independently of the operator that you choose. So that makes the phone numbers the way for them to identify amongst other people. And one thing that we've also observed is that email usage is incredibly low. I mean, people really don't use email for anything. I mean, it's unless there is something that really requires them to, they open up some emails, they keep forgetting their passwords. But messaging and phones and the simplicity of using a messenger that is associated with your phone helps them and gives them a lot of control over their digital lives. And that's one of the observations also that we've seen. Third, this is more of a market-centric observation. It's that it turns out that this winner-takes-all messaging, or that there's going to be this notion that there's going to be just one player that is going to take over the world, and it's just going to be the king of messaging, and everyone's going to have to obey by the rules. That's a realization that's becoming harder to achieve. I mean, we don't see that these users are just trusting just one option. They're just trusting the communication habit. I mean, they're trusting the way that they're communicating. So that can be exploited by many companies. Many of you here in this webinar could be using messaging as well to connect and to engage with your users. So that's one thing. But unless you're in China, for example, where it really makes sense for the government to have just one or a few players, can be easily controlled, that's another story. But outside of China, I would argue that it's going to be hard to achieve this winner takes all in messaging space. Also, one thing that really helps companies like Twnel and your companies is this new access to the personal graph and push notifications. And personal graph and push notifications are completely levelers. They really level the playing field for new players to innovate and to have access to what others have had access before. So again, winner takes all. It's harder to achieve for the giants, and that's good news for small players like Twnel and many others. Fourth, one thing that we really are observing and we're really hearing the companies that we talk to all the time, we speak to companies, as I mentioned, every single day. It turns out that messaging is quickly evolving from being a convenience-oriented service, and that's what we call the developed market approach, which is how people are using messaging. It's just a better way to do phone calls or to do SMS or any other communication method, to a different type of approach that we call the necessity-oriented approach. And we think that's the emerging market approach. People are not using messaging just because it's nicer in emerging markets. It's because it's cheaper and saves them time, and it's just the way to go. So I have a comparison here between what you find in messengers like Facebook Messenger, where you might receive ads at some point during your interactions, while we at Twnel, we're completely focused on this utilitarian value that we provide to the companies and to the users. companies have to pay for it, but they don't have to be exposed to ads and things like that, distractions like that. So that's point 4. And point 5, just to finish up with the emerging markets difference, is that there is a new generation of consumers who are opting for these new messaging-based services like Twnel and others. And they're now helping us draw a very clear line between what's a personal messenger and what's a professional messenger. So most of the users we talk to that really want to connect with companies using messaging as a format, they really feel like they should be using a different tool besides their personal messenger. I mean, they don't want to use their personal messenger to connect with the companies that they work for. They really need that. They really feel like they need something else, and that's something that we've really been focusing on and building over the last few years. And that's the final observation. So let me go through now the challenges that these companies face. I mean, we're going to talk about the companies, the Suras, the Avons, those companies who are down there, who are operating in these markets, and who are really feeling that they need to connect with these mobile first workers, but they really don't know how. So I'm gonna give you some perspective on that. So first, most of these companies feel like they've been left behind when it comes to really taking the advantage of using smartphone messaging, and that's because most of the attention that we see in the messaging industry has shifted towards person-to-person messaging, and that's what we hear every single day. I mean, the new feature that helps you share more or accomplish something else and help you better communicate. But no one has really thought about how to build something from day one, thinking about how companies can take advantage of this trend, this messaging trend. And that's something that we've been listening into the market. Second, existing businesses communication tools really have not responded to the change that we're seeing in user habits. So when we talk to these users, they tell us that they rather use messaging instead of doing phone calls or emails or even web chats, who are nice for some people who have computers or have access to web browsers, but they're not really as useful when it comes to people who only use phones and messaging on their phones. So companies are just starting to wake up to this reality. I mean, they have built infrastructure over the last few years, or the last decades, that it's centered around technologies that no one else is using, and most of their users prefer not to use. Third point is, turns out that personal messengers, like the ones that we all know, were not built for communication and coordination between these businesses and their extended networks of users, like the insurance company with their network of providers or assistance providers. And we're talking about companies connecting with people or with individuals who are not even part of their organization. So it's not easy for them just to assign a new email or assign a new Google account so they can have a Hangout conversation, because they're not inside the organization, they're outside the organization, and there are thousands of those out there. So there needs to be a tool that helps them connect. And what we also found is that the current tools are available in the market are somehow ineffective. They don't really have business, or they have a huge lack of business control. Most of them create distractions, and some have ads, and at the end, some of them or most of them don't align with what the needs of the business are. So what we found is that there's no one single tool to connect these businesses with their networks of mobile first workers using the way that they really want to communicate. And that's what we've been working on at Twnel. So as I mentioned, most of the tools out there are personal, but not professional for this type of use case. So I'm going to briefly talk about Twnel. So we define ourselves as a messaging service that helps companies empower their mobile first workers. And that's our motivation, or day-to-day motivation. In a quick slide, for medium-sized businesses, we're a professional solution that helps them communicate and coordinate groups of people, even if they're not part of the organization, as I mentioned. It's a great way to scale and automate many of those interactions that used to be done through other channels like phone calls and other traditional channels. And it's ideal for communication with agents, sales representatives, consultants, brokers, intermediaries, among others. There are many definitions of these intermediary audiences that we target. Also, Twnel is it's a SaaS, it's a software as a service that really helps these companies feel like they're really getting into this digital collaboration economy, because they share technology with their networks and they can exchange more and more information more quickly. And for the end user, Twnel is a free tool. It's a free messenger that saves them time and money. That's very clear. It's also a mobile messenger that has no distractions. There's no daily jokes. There's no family pictures from the weekend. There are no ads. And it really helps them stay ultra connected and focused with the companies that they work with on a daily basis. And finally, also, it's a tool that empowers them. So when you talk to them, they all feel empowered. And that for us is just the realization of our dream, which is empowering more and more of these individuals. And we're talking about billions of these individuals around the world who are getting to be empowered for the first time. So that's part of our plan. So how does the product look like? So this is just a screenshot of the product. It's pretty much a web-based management tool for companies. That's where companies can manage the interactions with their end users. We also have this mobile client or mobile-first client, which is an Android-based application and also an iOS application that helps them engage with these companies in very different ways. And again, it's being built with company control at the center of everything, and that makes it very attractive for companies. Here you can see a screenshot of how your iOS version looks and how the other Android's versions look like too. Finally, this is how Clara and Andres see their daily messengers. So if you notice that they have a company called Herbalife, they have a company called Novoventa. They also talk to other people in their network, other friends that are connected as well. But most of the conversations that happen in these messages are really professional. So they really feel like they have the right tool for the right job. So they use it right now. They use Twnel to place orders. They solve customer support inquiries. They receive marketing messages from the companies that they work with. And Andres, for example, he gets service updates and reports visit statuses and things like that. So it's a very interesting way for them to connect on their daily life without the need of a phone call or without the need of a personal messenger to connect to these companies. So why are companies subscribing to Twnel? Again, just a brief, I think we mentioned this before. So we really feel like companies really want to be in control. We are not an ad-based, we don't have an ad-based business model. It's completely utilitarian. So companies pay for the service, they pay more if they want more. And we are really generous in terms of how we give companies an entry-level version of Twnel free of charge, so they can explore the usage of these type of use cases. So we don't have any distractions, as I mentioned. It's a very professional communication tool versus a personal communication tool. And also we have this flexible enough full stack solution. And when I mention full stack is that everything's integrated. I mean, the web client, the mobile client are tightly integrated, and they could be connected to the company's APIs and data sources. And that makes it very unique and very useful for them to feel like they have their own tool. And what we're seeing is that we're seeing how Twnel has become the preferred messenger of choice for some industries. And that's what we're seeing week after week. So finally, we are just really scratching the surface. Twnel, we think that at this point, we're very focused on making Twnel the default messenger of choice for an increasing number of industries, and that's been a really interesting journey. We're really working towards that. After that, we really have plans to build really sophisticated and more complete automation layer on top of Twnel, so that we can provide our customers or subscription-based services that helps us reinforce the value proposition for companies. I mean, it's cost savings, it's speed, but it's using technology, it's using AI to help them achieve more with these networks of individuals. We're also going after building Twnel as a platform where companies can build their own apps on top of it. I mean, I just briefly showed you how companies can build mini applications on top of Twnel, and they can connect those to their IT systems. So what we're doing is we're really going deeper into how that could be achieved and how can we open it up to more and more companies. So that's some of the plans that we have. So finally, I'm just gonna try to wrap up very, very quickly. Why is it that we're using MongooseIM to support our backbone? So the first reason is it has a great connection abstraction for mobile and web users. So it helps us implement different types of communication flows, from person to person, to business to company, business to consumer, I'm sorry, or business to person, and business to business messaging. So we're really into enabling those type of interactions, and Mongoose helps us really achieve that. So this is one of those platforms that has lots of contributions, and that for us it's really helps us to get that type of help, because it helps us reduce time to market of features and all the things that we've been working on. So it helps us, and it has support for the latest standards, such as and the XCP, such as Mocklight for groups, and we just recently launched groups, which is a very interesting feature. It's a groups implementation where companies are in control. So imagine having your WhatsApp, but where someone who's a master of the group, which is a company, has every single right to own that information and to manage all the interactions and to manage the permissions of the people inside the group. So that helps us implement very easily a feature like groups. So it's, as everyone knows, it's based on mature technologies like XMPP. It provides us, it gives us a lot of automated tools, or automation tools, I'm sorry, so we can deploy easier. And finally, it's two things more: easy to scale. It's open source, which is ideal for these type of projects. We can just play with it and tweak it if necessary. And we have a great support from the development community. Finally, how do we use MongooseIM at Twnel? So we have an implementation of Twnel where we have built custom extensions using hooks, XMPP hooks, to route messages from businesses on our web client to send push notifications for mobile users. We've also tweaked the Erlang code, custom code. They're basically a custom code, so we can add some very specific parts of we can solve some of the very specific problems of the parts of the problem that we're solving. So the idea, as I mentioned here, it's to support more than the basic feature set that we have available, and we can expand more if you wanted to. Finally, we use Docker to automate the deployment process, and we've been so far super happy using the platform, and we're really thankful to the team at Erlang to be doing this huge effort to contribute to the industry. So with no further to do, I will now welcome Nicholas. It's Nicholas, the product owner of Mongoose. It's the person in charge of this at Erlang Solutions. And just a reminder for everyone, we will have some time for Q&A at the end of Nicholas' intervention. So Nicholas, I'm handing to you.
Thank you very much, Carlos. Very clear. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to introduce you to MongooseIM very rapidly. So what is MongooseIM? MongooseIM is a platform for companies to build applications that offer conversational experiences to customers. If you can go to next slide, please, Carlos. So we deliver MongooseIM for each scale, the one just before, exactly, thank you. We deliver to early stage companies starting with an idea up to unicorns. Companies who have reached the product market fit, like Twnel, are really in the middle, and we are able to massively scale. Next slide. So the main features of the MongooseIM platform rely on chat or messaging, whatever you name it. So as Carlos said, there is interpersonal messaging that you can use to build your chat application or your application that does something else and to which you add a chat. Also, what you have is features around groups, like Carlos was mentioning as well. And also, we offer some pieces for social networking, still based on text, but also some media. Up until that, we have some features around voice, one-to-one voice. All of these contribute to your application building so that you increase your acquisition, your retention, and your referral, because all those features attract people, retain them, and make other people come into your application. Next slide. So on the next slide, I'm going to detail the platform. The platform is made of several components. Some of the components are back-end, some of them are in the front end. So in the middle, you see MongooseIM, the messaging and chat server. On top, you see that there is two ways to communicate with other persons. That's using the XMPP technology or the REST technology. So in every configuration, we have libraries for you so that they can be integrated quite fast on your client-side application. On the left side of MongooseIM, we have load testing infrastructure. That is a continuous load testing infrastructure. This allows us to measure the performance impact of all the commits, all the pull requests that we have, either from within the team inside Online Solutions or for contributions. And down you have Wombat AOM that was mentioned earlier by Mladen, the monitoring and operations system. And you have also two demo applications that are available on iOS and Android. They are very simple and very early stage, full of bugs, but they are here as a technology demonstration and code example. And finally, on the bottom or right corner, there is two additional backend servers that are available today. One is MongooseIce, that's an ICE stun and turn server that allows you to offer voice communications, and also Mongoose Push, which is a push notification server. Next slide. Now that was very technical. Now let's talk about the benefits. All of the platform is massively flexible and configurable. You can choose whatever components you want to deploy, and you can deploy them whatever you want. So as Carlos said, it's a mature and proven technology, and we test it even more. So the development as a result is very fast, and you can trust it. As I was saying, we offer massive scalability thanks to the Lang and Elixir languages and their features, their inner qualities, but also because we have architectures that scale. Like you can deploy on single servers, you can deploy on clusters, you can even deploy on multiple data centers that are located across continents. Of course, we contribute to communities and ecosystem because we cannot live by our own. So we contribute to our Lang and Elixir communities, obviously, but also to iOS and Android communities, to the XSF and XMPP community, obviously, and also in the web community. Everything is extensible, as Carlos said, through the help of webhooks and by developing in Erlang and Elixir. As I was saying, it was widely tested and deployed. So it's not only tested by automation, but also it's tested by real people by massive deployments across the world. And of course, it's open source and open standard, so you can deploy it right away. Next slide. So a little word about the roadmap. Last year, MongooseIM was a single server. We pivoted to a platform. The platform is, as I was saying, multiple components. So we started by offering a REST API, client libraries, client applications, but also that differentiator that is Motlite, that is a group chat that is compatible, totally compatible with the mobile industry today, and also PubSub, that is a design pattern that allows you to do social networks. So this year we are still working on the 2.1 release. We have released beta 1 and beta 2 that is already available, and we're still continuing our effort on 2.1. So this is a strengthening of the platform. As I was saying, we are offering now 2 new components, which are MongooseIM for voice, Mongoose Push for push notifications. We have massively increased the quality of the code and the documentation, and the Tide CLT, that is the Tide continuous load testing platform, is available for testing every PR that you will submit to us. So what's coming next year is the 3.0, and we will be focusing on enlarging the capacity of the platform that will include IoT and chatbots. So don't get me wrong, the platform is already ready for IoT and chatbots, but we will increase that capacity thanks to new features. And also we'll be delivering some significant tutorials for you to integrate faster. And coming next, please suggest what you need for your business. And that's it for me. Now up to the questions. Next slide.
Thank you, Carlos, and thank you, Nicolas. I am pretty sure that everyone on the webinar thoroughly enjoyed this. I am sorry to say that we have just a few minutes left for Q&A, but I would still ask our audience to pose questions. We will pose the questions in order in which they were received, and we'll try and answer as many of them as you can. So let's start with the first question without losing any time. Carlos, when you started Twnel, and it's come a long way, it's progressed to where it is now. Can you tell us a bit about the sheer energy, the time, the investment needed to create an application of this type and at this level? What did it take, and how hard was it to sort of get to where you are now?
Well, that's a great question. Thank you for the question. So it's been a journey, as I mentioned. It's been a journey where we've been lucky to have a tremendous team behind, and we have one of the best people that I know building our technology and building a platform that it's, as I said, very user-centric. So we don't build a feature, we don't move a single line of code without really validating that our customers really are dying for the feature. So it's been a journey. We've been working over the last 3.5 years on this project. We launched the project almost 2 years ago, and now we're seeing, as Nicolas mentioned, we're seeing product market fit. So it's been a team behind. It's an effort of a team, really, and it's with the help of platforms like Mongoose, we've been able to achieve more with less, I guess.
Thank you for that. I think that answers the question. I'll just move straight on to the next question. And again, even though it looks like we can only answer a few, we'll try and answer as many as we can. So you talked about the territories that you're currently focusing on, specifically South America. Do you see the service advancing and entering other markets, other emerging markets? Do you feel that the use case is similar, or that there is a market for Twnel in the rest of the world, so to speak?
Yes, I mean the clear answer is yes. We are already seeing traction in other markets where we have companies interested in using the product and pretty much replicating what we've been able to use or do in emerging markets like Colombia and Latin America. So we really think that Africa is one of those markets where there's a huge opportunity. The dynamics, the market dynamics, are pretty similar to what we're seeing in Latin America. We have a huge percentage of prepaid, so people rather use messaging instead of doing phone calls. And when it comes to interacting with businesses, it really makes sense to use messaging. We're seeing lower smartphone adoptions in these markets, but I think it's just a matter of time where we will see smartphones getting to a point that we saw in the picture in one of the slides. So I think Africa is one of those. Southeast Asia, it's one of those crazy markets in terms of how people use messaging on a daily basis, and how they really want to go from using a personal message to start using a professional tool for their daily work. So we really see that there's opportunities in most developing economies. We really think that the use case in developed markets is a bit different. People are more connected. We don't find these mobile-first users. People are really connected at the library, at the office, and at home. So that the use cases are different. So I think for now we will be focusing on developing markets. I think India, it's huge, and there's some players who have done inroads in that market already. But we think that there's a huge opportunity for everyone.
Indeed, and Twnel seems to have a very unique angle at looking at things. So, I would think there's very much a market for you to compete for there. Now, just to move on straight to the next question, Carlos, one of our members of the audience, Loren, is specifically asking, before you got to where Twnel is today, did you initially set up an MVP? And if so, was it on the same Erlang platform, or did you use some other stack?
Great question. We really tested tons of things. I mean, we had the opportunity to go out there and find different options in the market, and after doing many experiments, after going through the whole process of setting things up, we found out that MongooseIM was the right choice for us, or for a use case. So yes, the answer is yes. We did a lot of research, and also we did a lot of experiments with these platforms, and we ended up using Mongoose as because of the reasons that I mentioned in one of the slides, which is it has a huge support, and it has a lot of information out there available, so you can start from scratch with no problems. Yeah.
So let me just tie into that with the next question, which I think is suitable for this. We ourselves at Erlang Solutions have done a lot of work with messaging, and a part of that was obviously developing MongooseIM. But what we've seen is that one of the biggest challenges in messaging is scalability, and how you cater for unexpected volumes of traffic that sort of tend to go up and down, how you scale up, but then also scale down and save resource when it is not needed. So can I ask you of your own experience in terms of scaling your technology, in terms of scaling Twnel and its capabilities?
Yes. So for us, scaling is a top priority right now. We are seeing an increase in the usage of the product. One of the nice things about the product we're building is that we can control that growth, because we are the ones who help the companies adopt the product and invite or promote the usage of Twnel Messenger. So it's a very important subject for us, and Mongoose has helped us think about scaling from day one. So with us is Jonathan from our team, who's in charge actually on the scaling team, and who's currently helping us grow from the number of XMPP servers that we have today to the number that we really want to get to in the next few months. So if you have any additional very technical questions about scaling, I think Jonathan will be happy to help us.
Thank you for that, and thank you for reminding me. I should have said at the beginning of the Q&A session that we also have Jonathan Valencia, the head of infrastructure at Twnel, joining the Q&A session from a more technical perspective, so ready and available to answer any more technically challenging questions. And the next one might be of interest to both yourself and Jonathan, and it concerns your current monitoring infrastructure. So what do you currently use to monitor your service and components such as MongooseIM and so on?
I will leave that question to Jonathan. So Jonathan, if you're around, I think that's much better for your side. Jonathan, can you hear us?
I think we'll need to unmute Jonathan.
Yes.
There you go.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, so basically for the monitoring, we have a lot of third-party services actually hitting our services URL. So basically we're able actually to know if something is working or not, or is up and down. And we also have a cluster implemented in Kubernetes, so it's really easy for us to actually know if a service is down or needs to be scaled. And we also actually collect all the logs from all our servers, and we define rules to actually know if that's something that we can improve on performance, or there is an error that we must actually solve, like a hot fix or in a new feature. So it's actually kind of implemented with several methods.
Wonderful. Thank you for that, Jonathan. Now, just to try and honor all the questions that our audience have asked, and I do apologize for questions we will obviously not have time to answer, we'll just move straight on to the next one. And Jonathan and Carlos, this might be one for you again. One of the members of the audience is asking, how does a solution such as Twnel compare to something like Layer? And I'm not sure whether you've heard of Layer, but layer.com is the website. It's a reasonably well-known service. As you've said, a lot of people are trying to sort of emulate what WhatsApp has done with a unique flavor, so to speak, and filling a certain niche. So how does your solution compare with something like Layer?
That's a great question. Just the short answer to that is we're an out-of-the-box full stack solution. So we help companies who want to start engaging with these mobile-first workers start seeing results in just days. So if you have a company, you want to go out and try different things. If you go with Layer, for example, it's great because it's specifically designed for those companies who already have some sort of digital asset, like an app, a mobile app, where you want to integrate messaging with it. But in our case, we're not embedded within companies' apps. We're a full stack solution. We're a universal messenger. It's a new tool that everyone needs to start using. So the implementation for companies takes just hours. I mean, if you go to a website, you can activate your company in just a few minutes. And right after that, you can start using the service from scratch. I mean, from day zero. So there's no need to do anything beyond just activating your company and inviting your users. But that's a big difference. So we're a full stack solution where everything's ready to go from day one, while there are other options where you can integrate messaging within your own apps and do more very custom or very particular things suited to your business model or to your use case.
Thank you for that. I think that definitely sort of underlines the distinction between the two models. But speaking of models, another member of our audience, Didier specifically, is basically saying, look, we've talked about WhatsApp, we've mentioned Telegram, and we've talked about their business models. Now, can you tell us a bit about the Twnel business model specifically?
Sure, that's a great question as well. So it's very simple business model. We have 3 plans. It's a classical SaaS subscription model. So we have a free plan. It's a free plan. It includes access to unlimited number of users. You have a limited number of agents from your company. You also have an unlimited number of conversations that you can manage or handle within your company instance. We also have a paying plan, and it's a paying plan. Everything, all this information is on website. It's twnel.com, TWNEL.com, on the pricing section. And this second plan allows companies to do a bit more. It gives them access to metrics, so they know exactly what's going on with their channel, this new channel. It gives them access to groups, for example. They can manage now groups and on a controlled way. And also it gives them access to broadcast services. So if you have these 200,000 users or 2,000 users out there, you want to broadcast information to them, it's very easy to do that from a paying plan at Twnel. We also have a more sophisticated plan that includes more features geared towards automation, where companies can do even more with the platform. So it's a very simple pricing model: free, pro, and enterprise. And that information is available on our website if you want more.
Thank you for that. I think that answers the question. Now, I'm really sorry to say, because I really enjoyed the whole session, we have 1 minute left in the webinar, so I'll just use it to quickly ask the final question from Humberto. Humberto is asking, if we have a product that's supporting VoIP, but would like to add instant messaging to this product, would you recommend MongooseIM for this particular use case? So this is a question.
I think that's a question for Nicholas, maybe.
Yeah. So Nicholas, do you need me to repeat the question?
Yes, please. I couldn't hear it.
Yeah, that's fine. So Humberto is asking, if we have a product that supports VoIP, and if we want to add instant messaging to this product, would you recommend MongooseIM for this use case?
Yes, definitely. We have seen many of our customers integrating messaging across VoIP services. And definitely MongooseIM is one of the solutions of choice. We have experience around that. Also, you can bridge XMPP with protocols like SIP, and thanks to our REST API, not only the client-facing REST API, but also the back-end-facing REST API, you can integrate better into your infrastructure.
Excellent, thank you for that. Now, I'm really sorry to say we've already run over the allotted time for the webinar, so I'll just briefly say that I'm sure that everyone here will join me in thanking Carlos, Nicola, and Jonathan for a great talk and an even better Q&A session. Many thanks to everyone who's joined us for the webinar as audience, and please join us again next month for our following webinar. Now, after today, we will send you a short survey just to make sure we get your feedback of today's webinar. And please also note that the recording of the webinar and the presentation that was shared with you today will also become available for you to collect on Erlang Solutions' corporate website at www.erlang-solutions.com. Now, thank you all very much once again, and we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar.